What if the investment strategy you believe builds wealth is actually costing people hundreds of thousands of dollars without them realizing it? Right now, somewhere, someone is checking their brokerage account, seeing a dividend payment land, and feeling like they're winning. Money showed up. It feels real. It feels safe. But here's the question almost nobody asks. Is that feeling of progress the same thing as actually building wealth? Most people compare investments completely the wrong way. They look at what shows up in their account this month instead of what their entire portfolio is worth over decades. And there's one number almost nobody looks at, a number that, once you understand it, changes how you see every investment decision you'll ever make. The difference isn't just a few dollars. Over 30 years, the gap between how people think about this and how the math actually works can become hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the surprising part isn't which strategy comes out ahead in different scenarios, it's why so many people never even ask the right question in the first place. Later, I'll walk you through a historical comparison that tends to surprise even people who've been investing for years. But first, you need to understand what you're actually comparing, because right now, most people don't. Let's start with dividend stocks, because they feel intuitive. You buy shares in a company. That company makes a profit. Instead of keeping all of that profit, it sends a portion of it directly to you, the shareholder, usually every quarter. You don't have to sell anything. You don't have to time the market. The cash just appears. For a lot of people, that feels like the closest thing investing has to a paycheck. It feels tangible, predictable. Some companies have paid and even raised their dividend for decades in a row, through recessions, through crashes, through years when everything else felt uncertain. That consistency builds trust. It's part of why dividend investing has such a loyal following. But here's where it becomes interesting. A dividend isn't free money. When a company pays you a dividend, the value of that payment comes directly out of the company's own worth. The stock price typically drops by roughly the amount of the dividend on the day it's paid out. You're not gaining new wealth out of nowhere. You're having a portion of your own investment converted from stock value into cash. It's less like a bonus and more like breaking a $100 bill into smaller ones. Same total value, different form. That single fact is the one almost nobody looks at. And once you see it, a lot of assumptions about dividend investing start to look different. Think about what that means for how dividend income actually feels versus what it actually is. Every quarter, cash lands in your account, and it genuinely feels like your portfolio grew. Psychologically, that's powerful. It's one of the reasons dividend investing has such a devoted following, especially among people who lived through market crashes and wanted something that felt more predictable than watching a stock price bounce around. But feeling predictable and being additive to your total wealth are two separate things, and conflating them is exactly the mistake this video is trying to help you avoid. Now let's talk about index funds, not as a recommendation, but as the other major approach to understand. An index fund doesn't try to pick individual winning companies. Instead, it holds a broad basket of companies at once, tracking the overall performance of a market or a segment of it. Some of those companies pay dividends. Many don't. Some are reinvesting every dollar of profit into growth instead of sending cash to shareholders. Historically, the total return of a broad market index, meaning price growth, plus any dividends, all reinvested, has been the benchmark that individual dividend-focused portfolios are often measured against. And this is where the emotional experience of investing and the mathematical reality of investing start to pull in different directions. If you're serious about understanding money instead of just following financial advice online, subscribe now, because every week we break down the ideas that quietly shape your financial future. So here's the concept that changes everything: total return. Total return isn't just the cash that lands in your account, it's the complete picture. Price appreciation plus dividends combined over time. A company that pays no dividend at all but grows its stock price by 12% in a year technically delivered a better total return than a company that pays a 4% dividend but only grows 2% in price, for a combined 6%. This is the part that trips people up. Income and wealth are not automatically the same thing. You can receive consistent cash payments and still end up with less total wealth than someone whose investment paid nothing directly but grew significantly in value. And you can also have a company grow its stock price with no dividend and still underperform a steady dividend payer, depending on the years you're looking at. Neither path guarantees anything. That's the part that matters. But this isn't the biggest difference. There's something else that separates these two mindsets even further, and it has to do with what happens to the money after it's paid to you. Imagine two portfolios growing side by side, not two people. Just two approaches to the same amount of capital. One portfolio automatically reinvests every dividend it receives, buying more shares, which then generate their own future dividends. The other portfolio takes each dividend payment as cash and doesn't reinvest it. Historically, this difference compounds dramatically. Studies of long-term market performance have shown that a significant portion of total long-term equity returns has come specifically from reinvested dividends, not from price growth alone. Miss the reinvestment step, and you're not just missing a little upside. You're missing one of the primary engines of long-term compounding. That's the real surprise for a lot of people. It's not dividends versus no dividends. It's reinvested versus spent. A dividend strategy where every payout gets automatically reinvested behaves very differently, mathematically, than one where the cash is withdrawn and spent as income. We'll come back to that in a minute because there's a second layer here that most comparisons completely ignore. Taxes. In many countries, dividend payments can be taxable in the year you receive them, even if you immediately reinvest that cash back into more shares. That means a dividend-focused strategy held in a regular taxable account can quietly create a recurring tax event every single year, whether or not you actually wanted the cash. A strategy built around price growth rather than payouts, by contrast, generally isn't taxed until you decide to sell. You have more control over the timing. This doesn't make one approach automatically better. It depends entirely on your account type, your country's tax rules, your income needs, and your timeline. But it's a factor that pure, look how much income I'm getting comparisons almost always leave out. And leaving it out can quietly shrink your real after-tax wealth over the years without you ever noticing it happening. Here's another detail almost everyone misses. Concentration versus diversification. Dividend-focused portfolios are sometimes built around a smaller group of companies, often clustered in similar sectors: utilities, financials, consumer staples, because those industries traditionally generate the stable cash flow needed to pay consistent dividends. That can mean less exposure to sectors like technology, which have driven a substantial share of overall market growth in recent decades, precisely because many of those companies chose to reinvest profits into expansion instead of paying them out. A broad market index, by contrast, spreads exposure across nearly every sector, growth and income producing alike. That's not automatically a better outcome. Concentration has historically outperformed in some periods and underperformed badly in others, but it does mean the two approaches carry meaningfully different risk profiles, not just different income profiles. There's also a behavioral layer to this that rarely gets mentioned. Because dividend payments create a visible, recurring sense of reward, some investors find it easier to stay invested through downturns when they're still seeing cash arrive every quarter, even while share prices are falling. A portfolio built entirely around price growth offers no such feedback during a rough year. The only number you see is one that's temporarily smaller than it used to be. Whether that visible cash flow helps someone stay disciplined or simply makes it easier to avoid confronting a portfolio that isn't performing depends entirely on the investor, not the strategy itself. So what happened when you actually compare long-term historical performance? Broadly, across many multi-decade periods, the total return of diversified market indexes has often outpaced the total return of dividend-focused portfolios, largely because of that reinvestment and diversification effect. But there have also been extended periods, sometimes a decade or more, where dividend-focused, value-oriented portfolios outperformed, particularly during periods of high market volatility or economic uncertainty, when investors favored stable cash-generating companies over speculative growth. Neither history nor math guarantees which pattern repeats next. That's not a loophole in this explanation. It's the honest answer. Markets don't move in straight lines, and past performance across any multi-decade window doesn't predict the next one. What does that mean for how you should be thinking about all of this? Not which specific investment to choose. That's not what this is about. It means understanding what you're actually optimizing for. Are you trying to maximize long-term total wealth? Are you trying to generate spendable income right now, during retirement, for example, where receiving cash without needing to sell shares has real practical value? Are you trying to reduce how often you have to make selling decisions? Those are three different goals, and they can point toward different strategies because which one builds more wealth and which one fits your actual financial goals aren't always the same question. This is really the insight underneath everything we just covered. Most financial content treats this like a competition with one winner, but dividends and index-style total return aren't rivals. They're two different lenses for measuring the same underlying thing: how a company, or a market, creates and distributes value over time. One lens emphasizes cash you receive along the way. The other emphasizes the full picture, cash and growth combined, whether or not any of it lands in your account today. Once you see that distinction clearly, a lot of arguments you've seen online about which approach is better start to look incomplete. They're often comparing income to total return, which isn't a fair comparison at all. It's comparing a slice of the picture to the whole picture. So the next time you see a portfolio update, a dividend payment notification, or a headline claiming one strategy definitively beats the other, ask yourself the question this video was really about. Am I looking at total return, or am I only looking at the part of it that happens to show up as cash? That single habit, separating income from total wealth every time you evaluate a strategy, is worth more than knowing which specific stock or fund outperformed in any single year. Understanding that difference doesn't tell you what to buy. It tells you how to actually evaluate what you're looking at, which is a far more durable skill than following whatever performed best last year.